I get it, this stuff can be daunting, overwhelming. If you don't have the knowledge of how to service these items, there's not a lot of good information out there. So I'm gonna give you guys some behind the scenes tips and tricks on servicing Skymaster landing gear. Now, a lot of this stuff is pretty generic for most of their landing gear. It's sort of generic for air oil systems. We've got a good fix for you on the seal. I've used this fix on many other landing gear types from Skymaster, and it works out very well, and it is a permanent good solution. So let's dive into this gear and you guys will learn something today. So did a couple things here, just with it sitting at static, put some rubbing alcohol just around the seal and nothing's leaking. The base here as well too, we put some on the base and nothing's actively leaking out. But if we spray some rubbing alcohol on that leg and you compress it, watch the leg, you'll see air coming out in between the rubber seal and the leg itself. So every time this compresses, it is letting air out. Now, I have done a repair on the SU gear previously from Skymaster, and I was just doing some thinking on this, and I'm not sure if the leak is coming between the leg and the seal, or the seal and the cap here. Now on the SU, we did have a scenario where the seal was not actually sealing to the cap properly. So I'm thinking that's probably what this is. So I'm going to take this gear apart. We'll take a look at the sealing system. I haven't looked at the A10 sealing system before. So if that is the case, we'll probably try and put this back together anyways and do my little fix, and then we'll see if that fixes it. All right, so let's get into the Skymaster gear. So we've pulled the wheel off. Important, very important that you keep the brakes in the pad system in the proper order. We've covered this in videos previously. This part here is not a pad. That part actually sits against the O-ring or the pusher. Everything else is friction plates. So when I've taken this apart, I've put it exactly how it goes back together, and we'll just set this aside. We will clean that up. But the point of this is we want to take the leg out of the strut assembly. So one of the important things when you do this is release your pressure. So if you have a leg full of oil, in our case, the leg didn't have a lot of oil in it because most of it's leaked out. But I just pushed the little nipple on the end there, and it did shoot a lot of oil out. But the pressure is off the leg. You can see there's basically zero pressure left in there. So undoing the leg doesn't come out. Some other gear, the leg just pulls right out. So undoing the gear and the seal will allow everything to pop out. So we'll set that like that to keep the oil in it. So now all the legs are basically disassembled and reassembled a little bit differently. The theory behind it is the same. And this theory kind of overlaps with stuff I've dealt with previously in the past. So what we'll do to get this seal assembly off is we're going to take off our clip here. Now this clip is a standard setup where you use clip pliers, but it's been sanded down to fit in the leg. So if I use my clip pliers on here, I should be able to spread that out and get it apart. So generally, if this was not sanded down, we could take clip pliers like this, stick it in there, spread it out, but our tabs have been spread out or sanded down, so we're not able to do that, so we'll improvise a little bit. So regardless of whether this fixes it or not, we do need to get it off because we need to have access to that seal, whether we're fixing it or changing it. And after a little persuasion, we got it off. So that is a view of what it looks like. So if you look on the bottom section there, you'll see the pieces are sanded off. So now with that off, we should be able to pull our seal out. Have to be careful of this stuff. But there is our seal inside the leg. So this leg is designed, so there's a bushing in here. The bushing rides against the actual leg itself. And then there's a rubber seal inside the cavity in the leg. So as I mentioned previously, it's pretty much, when I was looking at it before, it's impossible to tell whether the air is coming out between the seal and the leg or the seal and this aluminum piece. Now in the past, as I mentioned, I have found that it has leaked between those two surfaces. So I'm just going to gently pop the seal out. I'm trying to keep it because if we can reuse it and the issue is in fact the seal between here and the leg, which I suspect that's probably what it is, because this is the same kind of setup that we've seen on the SU previously. So I suspect that's exactly what this is. So I'm going to get this stuff cleaned up and I'll come back and show you guys the fix. All right, so we'll set these parts aside for now because they're not needed. Now I cleaned this up a little bit initially with rubbing alcohol, and then I used a product that I received from my late friend Kelly. I'm sure this is available in most places, but I need to buy some more. But Suspension Clean, this stuff's pretty awesome. You spray something like this down, it's like brake cleaner, but it smells amazing. But it takes all the residue off and leaves the part very, very dry. So I sprayed these down, gave them a little brush off with my, or blow off with my compressor, and they're awesome. So one of the things that when I look at this now that you can see is going to be the issue. So if you look inside this cap, you'll see that it is a rough finish aluminum all the way around that sealing surface. So one of the issues is you're asking this hunk of rubber to seal against a rough surface. Well, it's going to be very difficult for that to happen unless there's a crazy amount of pressure, which there's not. So what we're going to do when we put this back in is we take a little bit of shoe goop. Now, grease might work, but the grease could mitigate its way out of there. So I use shoe goop or E6000, and we're just going to put some inside here. So we're just lining this channel here with goop, and then we'll put the seal back in, and it's going to nest itself in that goop. Now, as soon as we do that, we want to take this leg or this bushing assembly and get it reinstalled on the leg, making sure that we get it installed the correct direction. And the reason we want to do that is the pressure of the leg pushing out on this seal will help to seat everything in place and really push out against the shoe goop. So we'll go through that process, but I just want to explain to you what exactly I'm doing here while we're doing this. So I will use goop for this. Right there, doesn't matter what kind. This is the amazing household goop. Again, not that it really matters. I haven't used E6000, I don't think, for this process, but I think that is probably possible as well. The goop itself is a little bit thicker, so that's why I prefer it. So you can be pretty liberal with this stuff. So I'm just getting a whole bunch installed in there. It's going to ooze out, which is totally fine. There we go. So I'll take my finger now and just squish it all down. Now you want to be pretty fast with this because you want to catch it before it starts to skin over. The goop itself is a petroleum-based product, so it skins over based on the solvent evaporating. So we've got a decent amount of goop all the way around there. Now we'll take our seal, the little wiper lip goes out, and we'll get this guy installed in the leg. Now there's no spring in here. Some of their seals, like on the SU, there is a spring, but this guy is no spring, just the seal. Okay, so our seal's installed. Now we'll take our trusty bent screwdriver and we're just going to clean up some of that goop on the inside. You want to make sure that you're not gouging the bushing. The bushing is the sleeve that's in the rest of there. And then we'll take a little bit of rubbing alcohol and just clean that up as well. And there we go. So now that that's done, we want to nest this on the leg itself. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you get this installed in the proper direction. So we're going to wipe this down because it's got some goop on there. Now, it's important that when we do this, we are lubricating everything up so it slides on nicely. So we're just taking a little bit of light oil, doesn't really matter the kind, putting some on the rubber seal. Shock oil would be fine, silicone oil. In this case, I'm using, I think this is turbine oil, but I don't know. And then you just want to work this onto the leg. The big struggle is getting it over that groove. There we go. So we'll just slide it on there. We'll lubricate this up a little bit. Make sure it moves freely so it's nice and tight. That goop that's around that seal is adding quite a bit of pressure to that seal as well. Now I have done this previously on SU legs, even brand new SU legs, brand new seal kits, and this is definitely the fix for it. If you don't do this, it doesn't work. So then you can see there all of our goop that wiped off, which is fine. Clean that up. And there we go. So now all we do is we leave this to do its thing. We want that goop to kind of cure and set up and everything before we pressurize this. So we'll give it 24 hours to do its thing, and then we'll put this leg back together. I'm not going to worry about putting oil back in the leg when we put this back together because I just want to make sure that it actually seals with the air. And we'll do the exact same check we did previously by having the leg sitting there and putting some rubbing alcohol, compressing it, and seeing if it actually moves. So all I'm doing is just making sure this is cleaned up and all of our little bits of goop and everything are out of there. We don't want that goop floating around in the oil because it could stop the passages in the leg itself. So we'll leave that be and we'll come back to this and see if it fixes it. All right guys, so it has been 24 hours since we filled this leg up. Now I can tell you that we still have pressure in here, which is great, but we're going to test this and make sure that everything is okay with it. So what we will do is exactly what we did previously when we filled this up. So we're going to fill our cylinder here up to 80 psi, and when this is full to 80 psi, we should see just a small drop in the pressure. And if that's the case, we know that it is holding air. So you can see there, we've got 80 psi in the cylinder. So now we're going to fill this up and like 1 psi drop. Perfect. All right guys, so with a pressure drop of only like 1 psi, that means that we are holding air in this gear perfectly. Now, when I filled this up last night, I put some lubricant on here. I moved this and cycled this a whole bunch of times, probably if I had to throw a number at it, 40 to 50 times, and very happy. So it is now doing good, it's holding air. What does that mean? Well, it means that we know that our seal fix worked, which I was pretty confident that it was gonna work, but now we need to fill this leg back up with lubricant. So what do we use? Now, I don't know what Skymaster uses in the legs. I've heard guys using ATF, which is transmission fluid. I have always used silicone shock oil. Now the shock oil, this comes from a local hobby shop. I'm sure you could get it for a lot less expensive somewhere else, buying in big bulk containers or something, but I don't carry this stuff around on a regular basis. I just pick it up as I need it. So it comes in a bunch of different weights. I think the weights vary by like 5 or 10, but I usually go on the heavier side of things. So like we're using 70 weight, and it tends to work very well. Now there's a few more secrets when you're filling up these legs, and that's what we're going to cover next. All right, so if your leg is full of oil, when you do what I'm going to do, there is going to be oil leaking out everywhere. We've got most of the oil already out of the leg, so there shouldn't be too much. There we go. So we pretty much got all of it out previously. So that's the release valve for the air. It's also the location where you can put the oil in as well too. So if you look on Skymaster's website, I think there's some instructions somewhere on quantities and stuff, but I'll show you guys a much simpler process. All right, so you want to be very careful with the brass valve right there. The brass valves, you don't over tighten them. There's an O-ring sealing them. Just be gentle with them. You can strip them out quite easily if you are not careful. So this one was not very tight at all, which is normal because, again, you've got the O-ring sealing it. So it's a one-way valve. You can put pressure in there. To put oil in there though, this needs to come out. Now the Skymaster aircraft come with these kits, and they're okay. I'm not a huge fan of them, and I'll show you how you don't really need to use them. But there is this fitting here which goes in that fitting there. Problem is that this is not, in my opinion, the best way to go about this. So yeah, I'll show you my way of doing this. Do whatever way works for you, but yeah, I'll share that information with you. So what we're going to do is we could either use the bottle. It's going to be sort of hard to get the fluid in there. So what we'll do is we're going to use the syringe that comes with it. But we're not using the fitting. Okay, so we've just got our syringe. We're going to pop that guy off. There's a seal on there. We'll make sure we keep the seal. And we've got our silicone oil. Okay, so we're just going to suck this out of the bottle itself. Now the quantity really doesn't matter because of the way I'll show you how we're doing this. All right, so we'll just get some in the syringe, and we will put the syringe inside the leg and get some of it installed. Now the key when you're doing this is you want to cycle the leg, and you want to fill up the lubricant until you don't hear the leg or the piston assembly sucking in air anymore. So, near the bottom of the stroke, this oil also has to work its way through the system. So there's a, I think there's a plunger up in this area. So there we go. So now that it's worked through the system, there is not even enough to make the plunger run into the lubricant. So we've added, I don't know, a fifth of the bottle, and we still need to add a whole bunch more. Okay, so we've got roughly half the bottle. And some of the legs, like the big SU legs, they'll take a lot more fluid. I think the big SU legs took 2 of those bottles. Okay, so I put about half of that in there. Now again, we'll cycle this. And it's going to take a while for it to get pulled down to the bottom. There we go. There. So This is what we're looking for, and this is how we tell when we're full or we're at the correct amount. So right now, if I compress this, it's going through fluid, and then there's an air pocket in the bottom. So it's either at the bottom in this case, or it might be on full compression that you'll hear the air pocket. Depends on how the leg's designed. So we've got about half of our travel is dampened. So if you close this up and put air in this system right now, it's going to have a soft spot in the bottom with no damping, and then it'll get into the damping. We don't want that. We want more fluid in there. So we'll put the rest of this in and we'll see how that works. Now the key with this is not putting too much fluid in, because if you put too much fluid in, you get a hydraulic lock. So it'll travel a certain distance and then it won't move anymore. Again, giving it a little bit of time so the oil can work its way through the passages. Okay, so we now have oil throughout that entire stroke. There's a little bit of air at the end. I'll just make sure I hold it upright. All right, so that's good. I would say that is perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for. So as far as amounts go, this leg was pretty much empty. We used roughly half the bottle, which would be about 30 milliliters. Obviously there's still some floating around in there, but that should be a good amount. So what we'll do now is we're going to do up our brass fitting here. Again, make sure you don't go too tight. I'm just taking my fingers and just lightly tightening that. Okay, so now we're going to fill up our air system here. We'll just keep it consistent and go to 80 psi. I don't know what these legs require on the aircraft. You kind of have to base that depending on how your aircraft is set up. You want a little bit of sag, but we'll just keep 80 for consistency. Okay, so we've put 80 in there. I'm just going to fill it back up to 80 just to make sure that the volume wasn't affecting the pressure. So that dropped it a couple PSI below 80, so we'll keep it there, which is good. Now we'll check how this leg operates. So we want to hold it in its operational position, which is essentially like this, the legs up and down. And we'll give it a squish. Okay, so now that it's pressurized, you can see there we've got a gap in the system. And on average, it's about half of the travel. So we're still getting full travel, but we've got a big gap in the damping, which we don't want. So we know we need to add more oil to the system. So we're going to let the air out. We'll do it up top here without turning the leg down. So hopefully we just get air coming out, which is exactly what we got. So before I pull that fitting off, I'm going to pre-charge our syringe here. Okay, we've got some in there. We'll take off our fitting again, and we'll put some more in here. So in the syringe, we've got 15 milliliters. So I'm going to add, I was going to say about 10, but so the actual lubricant had a whole bunch of air in it. You can see by the material coming out. And don't worry so much about the oil going all over the leg, because we're going to clean that up afterwards. Okay, so we added about another 10 milliliters in there. So again, we'll snug this guy up. Clean the leg up a little bit. Now we'll see how our travel is with no air. So there's a bit of a gap on the top, but we'll fill it up with air and see what it feels like. All right, so next test, we're at 80 psi again. Okay, so we're getting full travel, which is good. So no hydraulic lock. And our damping effect is all the way through the leg. Sorry I have to hold this spot here, but those scissor linkages keep coming up. So there we go. If I let go of this, it's smooth all the way through the travel. So that is a perfectly serviced leg that is ready to put back into service. We don't have any leaks, no fluid gooping out, and we can give it another check here just like we did previously. So we'll take some rubbing alcohol, put it around our main seal, and basically what we're doing is just compressing this. So previously when I did that, there was air coming out of the seal area. And now we have no air coming out with our goop fix. So that is perfection. So when the leg's upside down like that, the oil will travel to the wrong spot. So you'll see here we've got gaps in the damping, and now that the oil's traveled back down, we're good. Perfect. Awesome, guys, that is wonderful. All right, so putting the leg back together, I've used our suspension clean stuff here to clean up the wheel, brake assembly and all that. It works beautiful. And again, when you're putting this back together, this pad that you see on the Skymaster brakes, they go against the rubber in the brake assembly, is how everything gets put together. So I'm just taking these, flipping them over to keep everything in exactly the same orientation that it was in. This one's pretty well stuck onto the leg, so we'll just leave that one where it is. And we'll flip this over and pop it on there. You know it went in place because it drops down, and now everything is working properly. So put our washer back on and our nut. There we go. So with that done, we'll tighten those guys up, and then we'll put our scissor linkage back together. And then this gear is essentially ready to reinstall in the aircraft and put back into service. All right, guys, and I did the scissor linkage bolts back up. And as a final step on gear like this, you want to take some light lubricant. I use some spare turbine oil and just drop it on your pivots. When you're using a product like brake cleaner or suspension clean, it does remove all of the lubricant from the leg and the different items. So it's important to make sure that you put a little bit back on those areas just so they're moving freely again. So we've done that. Everything is working well with this leg. It looks like everything's good. So this leg's ready to go back in. We are all cleaned up, all set, all ready to go. So perfection. All right, guys, and hopefully you got something out of this video, whether you're working on an A10 landing gear or any of the Skymaster Air Oleo struts. This is a good overview on how they all work. They're all very similar. They all use the same kind of fittings, although the fittings are going to be in different locations depending on the gear. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment down below. You could also help us out by subscribing to the channel. If you're watching this and you're not a subscriber already, it's free to do so. So hit that subscribe button down below and you won't miss any of our future videos. Thank you guys for watching this quick tutorial on servicing Skymaster landing gear legs and a couple little tricks and tips. And of course, all of these tricks and tips have been brought to you by Trusty Bent Screwdriver. Thanks, Trusty. Thank you guys. We'll see you in the next video.